The woman in the mirror. My name is Grace. I am 37 years old. In many parts of the world, and certainly in my family, 37 is considered dangerously close to a line that women are not supposed to cross without a ring on their finger and a child on their hip. I have neither. I live in a small town in upstate New York, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone else's business and where news travels faster than the internet could ever hope to carry it. It is a beautiful town, honestly. There are maple trees that turn gold and red in the fall. There is a river that runs through the center of town, calm and steady, and there are old brick buildings that have stood since before anyone alive can remember. I love this town.
But this town has opinions about me.
I work as a veterinarian at a small animal clinic on Elm Street. I have always loved animals. When I was a little girl, I would bring home injured birds and stray cats and beg my mother to let me keep them. She never did, but she saw something in me, a tenderness, a need to care for things. She encouraged me to become a vet, and I did. I finished school, I opened my practice with a small business loan, and I built something I am genuinely proud of. My days are filled with purpose. I help animals, and I help the people who love them. It is meaningful work. But none of that seems to matter when Thanksgiving comes around. Every year, without fail, my mother sets the long oak table in her dining room with her best china. The turkey is always golden and perfect. The mashed potatoes are always smooth. The pie is always warm. And the questions are always sharp. Grace, honey, are you seeing anyone? That is usually my Aunt Linda. She sits at the far end of the table and leans forward like she is about to hear the most important news of the century. Her eyes are wide and hopeful, and when I say no, they dim with something between pity and frustration. You know, my friend Barbara has a son. He is divorced, but he is very nice. Should I give him your number? That is my Aunt Diane. She always has a suggestion. A divorced man. A widowed man. A man from her church. A man from her gym. She collects single men like baseball cards and tries to trade them to me at every family gathering. My mother is more subtle, but her words cut deeper because they come from a place I cannot dismiss. She does not shout or lecture. She simply sighs. She looks at me across the table with soft, sad eyes and says things like, "I just want you to be happy, Grace. I want to know someone is taking care of you when I am gone." And then there is my younger brother, Kevin. Kevin is 33. He married his college sweetheart, Amy, when he was 25. They have 2 children now, a boy named Lucas who is 6 and a girl named Sophie who is 4. Kevin does not say much about my personal life directly, but his existence is the comparison. Every time my mother looks at Kevin and Amy and the kids, I can see the thought forming in her mind. Why can Kevin do it, but Grace cannot? I do not blame them entirely. They love me. I know they love me. But their love comes with a specific vision of what my life should look like, and I have failed to deliver that vision. In their minds, a woman my age should have a husband, a home with a white fence, and children running through the yard. I have a 2-bedroom apartment above my clinic and a rescue cat named Oliver who sleeps on my pillow every night. Most days, I tell myself I am fine. I say it out loud sometimes, standing in front of my bathroom mirror in the morning. You are fine, Grace. You have a career. You have your health. You have Oliver. You are doing just fine. And for most of the day, I believe it. I go to work. I treat a dog with an ear infection. I help a family say goodbye to an old cat. I eat lunch at my desk. I go home. I read a book. I go to sleep. The routine is comfortable and familiar. But there are moments, usually late at night when the apartment is too quiet and the only sound is Oliver purring beside me, when the loneliness hits me like a wave I did not see coming. It fills my chest with a heaviness that no amount of positive self-talk can lift. In those moments, I am honest with myself in a way I cannot be with anyone else. I want love. I want deep, real, consuming love. I want someone to sit beside me on the couch and read their own book while I read mine, just being together in comfortable silence. I want someone to call when something funny happens at work. I want someone who knows how I take my coffee and remembers that I hate olives and thinks my weird laugh is charming instead of embarrassing. I do not want to be chosen because someone feels sorry for me. I do not want to be chosen because a man looks at me and thinks, well, she is 37 and probably grateful for the attention. I want to be chosen because someone sees me, the real me, the woman who talks to animals like they understand every word, the woman who cries at old movies, the woman who can name every constellation in the winter sky because her grandfather taught her when she was 8. I want to be loved for the strange and specific person I am. This is my secret wish. I carry it quietly, like a small flame I protect from the wind. I do not share it with anyone because sharing it would make it vulnerable to opinions and judgments I am not strong enough to handle. So I keep it close, and I hope. It was a Saturday morning in early October. The air had just started to turn crisp, and the leaves were beginning their slow transformation from green to gold. I had no plans for the day. My clinic was closed on weekends, and I had been looking forward to a quiet morning at the coffee shop on Main Street. I liked to sit by the window with a large cappuccino and watch people walk by. It was my small ritual, my way of feeling connected to the world without having to participate in it too actively. The coffee shop was called Birch and Brew. It was owned by a woman named Maggie who knew everyone in town by name and remembered their orders. When I walked in, she smiled and started making my cappuccino before I even reached the counter. "Your usual, Grace?" she asked, already knowing the answer. I took my cup and found my favorite seat by the window. I opened my book, a novel about a woman traveling alone through Italy, and started to read. For about 20 minutes, everything was peaceful. Then the chair across from me moved. I looked up. A man was standing there, holding a coffee cup and looking slightly embarrassed. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with dark hair that had a few streaks of gray at the temples. His eyes were brown, warm, and deep, the kind of eyes that looked like they had stories behind them. He wore a simple navy blue sweater and jeans. He looked like he belonged in this town, but also like he had just arrived. "I am really sorry," he said. "Every other table is taken. Do you mind if I sit here?" I looked around. He was right. The shop was unusually crowded. A group of teenagers had taken over the large table in the back, and several couples occupied the remaining seats. "Of course," I said. "Go ahead." He sat down and smiled. "Thank you. I promise I will be quiet. I can see you are reading." I appreciated that. Most people would have immediately launched into conversation. He respected the silence. I tried to go back to my book, but I found myself reading the same paragraph 3 times. I was aware of him sitting across from me in a way that felt both strange and pleasant. After a few minutes, he glanced at the cover of my book. "Is that the one set in Tuscany?" he asked. I nodded, surprised. "You have read it?" "Last summer," he said. "The part about the vineyard made me want to quit my job and move to Italy." I laughed. "That is exactly where I am in the story right now." And just like that, we were talking. His name was Daniel. He was 42 years old. He had recently moved to town from Boston. He told me he used to work in architecture, designing large commercial buildings, but he had grown tired of the corporate world. He said the work felt empty, like building beautiful shells with nothing meaningful inside. So he left. He sold his apartment in the city, packed his things, and moved here to start over. He was now working as an independent contractor, designing and renovating homes, smaller projects with more soul, as he described them. I told him about my clinic. I told him about Oliver. I told him about the constellations. He listened to every word with genuine interest, his eyes never wandering, his phone never appearing. He asked me questions that no one had ever asked before. What was the most rewarding moment I had ever had as a vet? What was the last thing that made me laugh so hard I cried? If I could travel anywhere tomorrow, where would I go? The hours disappeared. I did not notice the coffee shop emptying and filling again with the lunch crowd. I did not notice the light shifting from morning gold to afternoon amber. When I finally looked at the time, nearly 4 hours had passed. Daniel noticed too. He smiled, that warm, easy smile. "I cannot remember the last time I talked to someone for this long," he said. "Neither can I admitted. He paused for a moment, then spoke carefully, like he was choosing his words with intention. "Grace, I would really like to see you again. Could I get your number? My heart did something it had not done in years. It leaped. It actually leaped, like a small bird suddenly given permission to fly. I gave him my number. He typed it into his phone slowly, like it was something valuable he did not want to get wrong. We said goodbye on the sidewalk outside the coffee shop. The October wind blew a few leaves across the street between us. He waved once, then walked in the direction of his truck, an old blue pickup that somehow suited him perfectly. I stood there for a moment, holding my book against my chest, smiling at nothing and everything. Daniel called the next day. He did not play games or wait the socially acceptable 3 days. He called on Sunday afternoon and asked if I wanted to take a walk by the river. I said yes immediately. That walk lasted 2 hours. We talked about our childhoods, our fears, our favorite seasons. He told me he loved winter because the world seemed honest when it was covered in snow, nothing hidden, everything exposed. I told him I loved autumn because it proved that letting go of things could be beautiful. After that, we saw each other almost every day. We went to the farmer's market on Wednesday evenings. We cooked dinner together at my apartment, and he did not mind that Oliver sat on the kitchen counter and watched us the entire time. We drove to a lake 30 miles outside of town and sat on the dock as the sun set, not talking, just being together in the kind of silence that feels more intimate than any conversation. Daniel made me feel something I had not felt in years. He made me feel interesting. Not interesting as a project or a problem to be solved, but interesting as a person. He wanted to know my opinions. He wanted to hear my stories. He remembered small details I mentioned in passing, the name of my childhood dog, the title of a poem I once loved, the fact that I always burned the toast. He remembered everything, and he brought these details back into our conversations like small gifts. My friends noticed the change immediately. My colleague at the clinic, a young woman named Priya, said I looked different. "You are glowing, Grace," she said one morning, smiling knowingly. "Something is different." I tried to downplay it, but I could not hide the happiness. It was too big to contain. When I told my family about Daniel, the reaction was immediate and predictable. My mother called me within an hour of hearing the news from Kevin, who had apparently seen me with Daniel at the farmer's market and reported back like a dutiful spy. "Grace," my mother said carefully, "a 42-year-old man who has never been married? That is a red flag. Normal men get married younger. Something must be wrong with him." I tried to explain that Daniel had been focused on his career, that he had chosen a different path, that not everyone followed the same timeline. But my mother was not convinced. "And he just moved here from Boston?" she continued. "Why would someone leave a good career in the city to come to a small town? People do not do that unless they are running from something." My Aunt Linda called next. Then Aunt Diane. Then my brother Kevin, who tried to be diplomatic but still managed to say, "Just be careful, Grace. You do not really know this guy." Their words planted small seeds of doubt in my mind. Late at night, when Daniel was not there, I sometimes wondered if they were right. Was I being naive? Was I so desperate for love that I was ignoring obvious warning signs? But every time I saw Daniel, every time he smiled at me and asked about my day and made me laugh until my stomach hurt, the doubts faded. They did not disappear entirely, but they became small and quiet compared to the loud, joyful feeling of being with him. It was a Tuesday evening about 6 weeks after Daniel and I met. I was closing up the clinic, turning off the lights and locking the medicine cabinets, when someone knocked on the front door. I opened it and found a woman standing on the step. She was about my age, maybe a year or two younger, with sharp features and an expression that was hard to read. She wore an expensive coat, and her hair was perfectly styled, the kind of woman who looked like she had stepped out of a magazine. "Are you Grace?" she asked. "Yes," I said, feeling a sudden unease. "I am Rebecca. I used to be with Daniel." My stomach dropped. She did not wait for an invitation. She stepped into the doorway and spoke quickly, as if she had rehearsed what she was going to say. "We were together for 5 years, she said. 5 years, and he could not commit. He kept saying he was not ready for marriage. He kept pushing the timeline. Eventually, I gave him an ultimatum, and he chose to leave instead of choosing me. I stood there, not knowing what to say. My hands felt cold. I just thought you should know, Rebecca continued. He is charming. He is kind. He will make you feel like the most important person in the world. But when it comes time to actually commit, he will run. That is what he does. He runs. She looked at me for a long moment, then turned and walked back to her car, a sleek black sedan that looked out of place on my quiet street. That night, I could not eat. I sat on my couch with Oliver on my lap, replaying Rebecca's words in my head. 5 years. He could not commit. He runs. I called Daniel. I told him everything. I told him about Rebecca's visit and what she said. My voice was shaking, not with anger, but with fear. I was afraid that she was telling the truth. I was afraid that this beautiful thing I had found was built on a foundation that would eventually crack. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. Grace, I am not going to lie to you. Rebecca and I were together. It was a real relationship, and I cared about her. But we were not right for each other. She wanted me to become someone I was not. She wanted the big house, the country club, the social status. I wanted something quieter, something more real. When she gave me the ultimatum, I knew that marrying her would have been dishonest, both to her and to myself. So yes, I left. Not because I cannot commit. Because I would not commit to the wrong thing. He paused. I understand if this changes how you feel about me, but I need you to know that what I feel for you is different. You're different. This is different. I believed him. Not because I was desperate or naive, but because his words matched everything I had observed about him. He was a man who valued authenticity over appearances. He was a man who would rather be alone than be with the wrong person. I understood that feeling deeply because I had lived it my entire life. My family, of course, reacted exactly as I expected when they found out about Rebecca's visit. My mother called it a confirmation of her suspicions. My brother Kevin said it proved Daniel had commitment issues. My Aunt Linda suggested I end things immediately before I got hurt. You are 37, Grace, my mother said, and I could hear the urgency in her voice. You do not have time to waste on a man who might not commit. If this does not work out, then what? You will be 40 and still alone. Her words stung because they touched the exact fear I carried inside me. But this time, something inside me pushed back. A quiet voice that sounded like my own but stronger said, "And what if it does work out? What if this is exactly what you have been waiting for?" I chose to stay. I chose Daniel. And I chose to stop letting fear make my decisions. 5. The business and the brother. 2 months later, another challenge arrived, this time from Daniel's side of the world. Daniel had a younger brother named Mark. They had not spoken in over a year. The reason, as Daniel explained to me one evening over dinner, was complicated and painful. Their father had passed away 2 years ago. He left behind a small but successful construction company and a will that divided the business equally between his 2 sons. Mark wanted to sell the company immediately and split the cash. Daniel wanted to keep it running because it was their father's legacy, the thing he had spent his entire life building. The disagreement turned into an argument. The argument turned into silence. Mark hired a lawyer. Daniel hired a lawyer. What had once been a family became a legal battle. I did not move here just because I was tired of the city, Daniel told me quietly. I moved because I could not stand being in Boston anymore. Everything there reminded me of my father and of the fight with Mark. I needed to start somewhere fresh. I reached across the table and held his hand. I understood now why my mother's question about why he left Boston had felt so unfair. He was not running from something dark. He was running towards something better, trying to heal in the only way he knew how. A few weeks after Daniel told me this story, Mark appeared. He showed up at Daniel's workshop one afternoon unannounced. I happened to be there, bringing Daniel lunch. Mark looked like a harder version of Daniel, same brown eyes but with a sharpness that came from anger and resentment. "So this is where you have been hiding," Mark said, looking around the workshop with obvious disdain. "Building little tables while Dad's real business falls apart." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he stayed calm. "The business is not falling apart, Mark. I have been managing my half remotely. You know that. Managing it from 100 miles away in some tiny town nobody has ever heard of, Mark shot back. Then he looked at me. And who is this? Another reason for you to avoid your responsibilities. I felt the sting of his words, but I said nothing. This was not my fight. Not yet. Daniel stepped forward. Do not bring her into this. This is between you and me. Mark stared at his brother for a long, tense moment. Then he shook his head and left without another word. That evening, Daniel was quiet. I could see the weight of the encounter sitting on his shoulders like a heavy coat he could not take off. I did not push him to talk. I just sat with him on the porch of a small house, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Finally, he spoke. I am afraid you will think I am not worth the trouble, Grace. My family is a mess. My ex-fiancé showed up at your door. My brother just insulted you in my own workshop. You did not sign up for any of this. I turned to look at him. Daniel, everyone comes with baggage. Everyone has a complicated story. If I only wanted to be with someone whose life was perfectly neat and simple, I would be looking for a fictional character, not a real person. He looked at me, and I saw something shift in his eyes. It was gratitude, yes, but also something deeper. It was the look of a man who had been waiting to be accepted exactly as he was, mess and all. I knew that look. I had been waiting my whole life to see it directed at me. The holidays arrived, and with them came the annual ordeal of family gatherings. This year was particularly painful because I had hoped that bringing Daniel as my partner would finally put an end to the questions and the pity. Instead, it made things worse. We went to my mother's house for Christmas Eve dinner. Daniel was nervous, but determined to make a good impression. He brought a bottle of expensive wine and a handmade wooden cutting board he had crafted himself, a beautiful piece of walnut with smooth edges and a natural grain pattern that looked like a river. My mother accepted both with a polite smile that did not reach her eyes. The dinner started well enough. The food was delicious. The conversation was light. Kevin and Amy talked about the kids. My father told his usual stories about fishing trips from 30 years ago. Daniel listened respectfully and laughed at the right moments. I started to relax. Maybe this would be okay. Then my Aunt Diane, who had arrived late and had already had 2 glasses of wine before sitting down, turned to Daniel and asked the question I had been dreading. So, Daniel, you are 42 and never been married?
What is the story there?
The table went quiet. Every pair of eyes turned to Daniel. I felt my face flush with anger and embarrassment. Daniel, to his credit, handled it with grace. I just had not found the right person yet, he said simply. Until now. He looked at me when he said it, and my heart swelled. But Aunt Diane was not finished. Well, you two better hurry up, she said with a laugh that was supposed to be playful, but landed like a slap. Grace is not getting any younger, and if you want kids, the clock is really ticking now. Diane, my mother said quietly, but it was not a reprimand. It was more of an acknowledgement, as if she agreed, but wished Diane had been more tactful about it. I looked down at my plate. The food suddenly looked unappetizing. I could feel Daniel's hand find mine under the table and squeeze it gently, but the damage was done. The rest of the dinner was a blur of small talk and forced smiles. Later that evening, after we had left my mother's house and were driving home in Daniel's truck, I finally broke down. The tears I had been holding back all night came pouring out. I cried hard, the kind of crying that makes your whole body shake and your breath come in ragged gasps. Daniel pulled the truck over to the side of the road. He turned off the engine. He unbuckled his seatbelt and mine, and he held me. He did not say anything for a long time. He just held me and let me cry. When the tears finally slowed, he spoke. Grace, listen to me. Your family loves you. I believe that. But their love comes with conditions you did not agree to. They have a picture in their heads of what your life should look like, and because your life does not match that picture, they think something is wrong. But nothing is wrong with you. You are the most incredible person I have ever met. You are kind and smart and funny and brave. The fact that you are 37 and unmarried does not diminish any of that. Not even a little. I wiped my eyes and looked at him. In the dim light of the dashboard, his face was serious and tender. You have spent your whole life trying to meet their expectations, he continued. And it is exhausting, is it not? It is exhausting trying to be the person everyone else wants you to be instead of just being who you are. Yes, I whispered. It is exhausting. Then stop, he said gently. Stop trying to earn their approval. You already deserve love and happiness exactly as you are. You do not need to earn it by checking boxes on someone else's list. That night, lying in bed with Oliver curled at my feet and Daniel beside me, I made a quiet decision. I would no longer measure my worth by my family's standards. I would no longer apologize for the life I had built. I would no longer feel ashamed of my age, my single years, or my unconventional path. I would own my story, every chapter of it, including the blank pages that were still waiting to be written. Spring came early that year. The snow melted quickly, and the world turned green almost overnight. Flowers appeared in window boxes along Main Street. Birds returned to the trees. The river, which had been frozen for months, began to move again, slowly at first, then with increasing confidence and energy. On a warm Saturday in April, Daniel took me to the lake where we had watched the sunset months ago. We walked along the dock, the wood creaking softly under our feet. The water was still and clear, reflecting the sky like a perfect mirror. He stopped at the end of the dock. He turned to face me. I noticed his hands were shaking slightly, and I realized with a sudden jolt that something important was about to happen. "Grace," he said, and his voice was steady even though his hands were not. "I have spent most of my life building things. Houses, furniture, businesses. I have always been good at building things with my hands. But the thing I am most proud of building is this. Us. What we have together." We chose a clearing in the woods near the lake, a spot where wildflowers grew in thick patches of purple and white. We invited 20 people, our closest friends, and the family members who supported us genuinely. Maggie from the coffee shop came. Priya from the clinic came. Daniel's best friend from Boston, a man named Tom who had driven 5 hours to be there, stood beside him as his best man. My mother came. She wore a blue dress, and she cried during the ceremony, and this time I knew the tears were from happiness. She held my face in her hands afterward and said, "You look beautiful, Grace. You look truly happy." "I am, Mom," I said. "I really am." Even my father, a man of very few words, put his hand on Daniel's shoulder after the ceremony and said quietly, "Take care of my girl." Daniel nodded and said, "Every single day, sir." And I knew he meant it. We have been married for almost a year now. Our life is not a fairy tale. It is not filled with dramatic gestures and grand adventures every day. It is filled with ordinary moments that feel extraordinary because we share them. We wake up early most mornings. Daniel makes coffee while I feed Oliver. We sit at the kitchen table and talk about our plans for the day. Sometimes we talk about important things. Sometimes we talk about nothing at all. Both kinds of conversations feel equally valuable. Daniel's workshop is behind our house now. He builds furniture and renovates homes, and his reputation has grown steadily in the community. People come from neighboring towns to commission tables and bookshelves and rocking chairs. I love watching him work. There is a focus and a peace in his face when he is shaping wood that reminds me of why I fell in love with him. He creates beautiful things with patience and care, the same way he loves me. My clinic is thriving. I hired a second vet last month, a young woman fresh out of school who reminds me of myself 15 years ago, full of idealism and tenderness. I am teaching her everything I know, and it feels good to pass on the knowledge and the compassion. Daniel and Mark have started talking again. It is not easy, and there are still difficult conversations about the business and their father's legacy. But they are trying. Last month, Mark came to visit us. He stayed for the weekend. He apologized to me for what he said in the workshop that day, and I could tell he meant it. He even complimented the house and told Daniel that the kitchen he renovated was the best work he had ever seen. Daniel pretended not to care, but I saw the emotion in his eyes. Brothers are complicated, but they are still brothers. My family has come around slowly, in the way that families do. My mother calls every Sunday, and our conversations are warmer now. She asks about Daniel, and she listens to my answers without judgment. She has even started asking for his opinion on things, like what color to paint her living room or whether she should replace her old dining table. These are small things, but they mean the world to me. They mean she has accepted him as part of our family. Kevin and Amy invite us to their house for barbecues in the summer. Lucas and Sophie adore Daniel. They climb on him like he is a jungle gym and he lets them, laughing the whole time. Watching him with the kids makes my heart ache in the best possible way. People still ask about children sometimes. Are you two planning to start a family? They ask, with that particular mix of curiosity and concern that people seem to reserve for women over 35. I used to feel a stab of anxiety when this question came. Now I simply say, we are happy with our life as it is. Whatever happens, happens. And I mean it. If children come, they will be welcomed with overflowing love. If they do not, our life will still be full and complete. I refuse to let anyone else's timeline dictate the terms of my happiness. I think about the woman I was 2 years ago, the woman standing in front of the bathroom mirror, telling herself she was fine while loneliness sat heavy on her chest like a stone. I wish I could go back and tell her what I know now. I would tell her that 37 is not a deadline, that love does not expire, that being single for years does not make you broken, it makes you selective and brave. I would tell her that the right person will not come to rescue her from her life, but will come to share it, to stand beside her and say, I like who you are. I like the life you have built. Can I be part of it? I would tell her that the family's voices, however loud, are not the final authority on her worth, that their expectations, however well-intentioned, are theirs and not hers to fulfill, that the only approval she truly needs is her own. I would tell her to keep that small flame of hope burning, the one she protects from the wind late at night when no one is watching. I would tell her that hope is not naive. Hope is the bravest thing a person can carry. Daniel is sitting across from me right now as I write this. He is reading a book about Japanese woodworking techniques, his reading glasses slightly crooked on his nose, a cup of coffee going cold beside him because he always forgets to drink it once he starts reading. Oliver is asleep on the armrest of the couch between us, purring softly. The late afternoon sun is coming through the window and making everything look golden. This is my life. It is quiet. It is simple. It is extraordinarily, breathtakingly beautiful. And it was worth every single moment of waiting. And I mean it. If children come, they will be welcomed with overflowing love. If they do not, our life will still be full and complete. I refuse to let anyone else's timeline dictate the terms of my happiness. I think about the woman I was 2 years ago, the woman standing in front of the bathroom mirror, telling herself she was fine while loneliness sat heavy on her chest like a stone. I wish I could go back and tell her what I know now. I would tell her that 37 is not a deadline, that love does not expire, that being single for years does not make you broken, it makes you selective and brave. I would tell her that the right person will not come to rescue her from her life, but will come to share it, to stand beside her and say, I like who you are. I like the life you have built. Can I be part of it? I would tell her that the family's voices, however loud, are not the final authority on her worth, that their expectations, however well-intentioned, are theirs and not hers to fulfill, that the only approval she truly needs is her own. I would tell her to keep that small flame of hope burning, the one she protects from the wind late at night when no one is watching. I would tell her that hope is not naive. Hope is the bravest thing a person can carry. Daniel is sitting across from me right now as I write this. He is reading a book about Japanese woodworking techniques, his reading glasses slightly crooked on his nose, a cup of coffee going cold beside him because he always forgets to drink it once he starts reading. Oliver is asleep on the armrest of the couch between us, purring softly. The late afternoon sun is coming through the window and making everything look golden. This is my life. It is quiet. It is simple. It is extraordinarily, breathtakingly beautiful. And it was worth every single moment of waiting. Not everyone will understand my story. Some people will say, I was lucky. Some will say I waited too long. Some will say Daniel and I should have found each other sooner, as if love operates on a schedule we can control. But I know the truth. We found each other at exactly the right time. Not a moment too early. Not a moment too late. We found each other when we were both ready to be found, when we had both done enough living and enough hurting and enough growing to recognize something real when it finally stood in front of us in a crowded coffee shop on a Saturday morning in October. I am Grace. I am 38 years old now. I am married to a man who sees me, truly sees me, and loves everything he sees. I have a career that gives me purpose, a cat who gives me comfort, and a life that gives me joy. And if you are reading this, and you are sitting in your own quiet apartment, and you are telling yourself you are fine while loneliness sits heavy on your chest, I want you to know something. You are not too old. You are not too late. You are not too much or too little of anything. You are exactly who you are supposed to be, and somewhere out there, someone is waiting to love you for precisely that reason. Keep the flame burning. Keep hoping. Your story is not over. It is just getting started.